All right, good evening and welcome everyone to Webster Speaks, Dialogues on Race, Equity, and Inclusion. My name is Earl McCoy Jr., the room host and moderator for this virtual talk show. I am also the regional recruitment coordinator for Webster University in the Washington, D.C. area. Tonight, we have two special guests, the Honorable Ella Jones, Mayor of Ferguson, Missouri, and Michael McMillan, President and CEO of the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis. Tonight's theme is the lessons of Ferguson, which stems from the killing of an unarmed teenager, Michael Brown Jr., at the hands of police 6 years ago, which led to a 17-day protest and civil unrest. We invite you to ask questions of our guests. Please do so on Twitter using the hashtag Webster Speaks, capital W and capital S. We will try to get to all the questions as possible. Now I turn it over to our host, Vincent C. Llewellyn.
Thanks, Earl. Good evening. I am Vincent Llewellyn, the Chief Diversity Officer at Webster University. I welcome you all to tonight's show. As Earl said, our theme tonight will be a conversation around lessons learned from Ferguson. There's no way in which we can have a conversation about Ferguson without recognizing Michael Brown Jr., the unarmed teenager who was killed nearly 6 years ago, next month, August 4th. And so before we get going and before I introduce our guests, I'd like to just take a moment to pause and to honor not only Michael Brown Jr., George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and all the other countless lives lost. And so if we could take a moment. Thank you. I'm so happy and excited about tonight. I have two fantastic and wonderful guests. The first of whom I will introduce is the Honorable Ella Jones. She is the first woman to be elected and to serve as mayor, as well as the first Black to be elected and serve as mayor of the city of Ferguson. Welcome, Mayor Jones.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I feel welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next guest is a longtime friend of mine, and I'm so particularly honored to have him on. Michael and I have known each other since our first grade, since we were in first grade, across the street from where I live yet today at St. Roch School, great old Catholic grade school. And so Michael has grown up to be quite the civil rights leader here in St. Louis, the great statesman, the great community and civic engagement individual that he is. He serves as the president and CEO of the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thank you, Vincent, for having me. Thank you for everything that you're doing at Webster. Thank Chancellor Strobel and everyone that has worked together to put this series together. And I want to say congratulations once again to my dear friend Ella Jones on her historic election and her service to the community, her trailblazing career. And the Urban League stands ready, willing, and able to work as your partner as we continue this march towards equality. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, Mayor Jones, I think I'll build off of that wonderful compliment from Michael and ask you one of the first questions. And I'm curious to know that once George Floyd, once you learned of that story and it breaking in Minneapolis, how did that make you feel in terms of thinking about whatever similarities may have come to your mind as it also happened in your own city 6 years before?
Well, I was heartbroken when I had an opportunity to view the Facebook, and it just bothered me to the point where we have not grown. We have not moved the needle as much as I had hoped to. And to see that young man pleading for his life, and the way the officers seemed to be like it was a commonplace thing for him to do, and really upset me to the point where he had his hand in his pocket as if, oh, this is okay. So, and going back to the time Michael Brown laid in the streets for 4 hours, just imagine how the parents felt. And my heart still go out to the parents. And we have to continue to work to move forward and demand the respect that we deserve from the police officers.
Thank you. How about you, Michael? What was your reaction to the killing as well as the aftermath?
You know, sadly, when you saw the tragedy of George Floyd's killing, just as the mayor mentioned, it reminded you that we have not moved forward enough in this country where African American lives are valued, respected, and appreciated in a manner that we all should have, that as American citizens, that we should be given the dignity and respect and equal treatment under the law. And what you saw, state-sanctioned killing by an officer of the law in 8 minutes and 46 seconds, where this individual realized he was being videotaped, was in a major metropolitan area in the middle of the daytime with several officers with him at the same time. We pay taxes to protect ourselves via police departments. Our taxes to those departments should not be used by individuals to then act on behalf of the same government that is to protect us, to actually execute its citizens in broad daylight. And so I was outraged, I was disgusted. I just could not believe that after everything that this country has been through, and then at that time, the world was going through, and it's still going through, because none of us have ever lived through a COVID-19 type environment. So we haven't had that since you had the Spanish flu 100 years ago. And so to have lived in what we have lived in the past several months, and then to see in the middle of that someone who is paid to protect us would actually kill us in broad daylight in front of everyone, knowing that he was being videotaped, as the mayor said, with his hand in his pocket in a very nonchalant manner, that this was totally appropriate. It was ridiculous. And as you mentioned, this is not the only incident that has happened. You know, so it took us right back to square one. All of the hard work, the dedication, and the commitment to try to move forward in Ferguson, move forward in other places, is not the type of activity we need to see in terms of moving forward as a community and as a country. And then you have something like this George Floyd incident and this tragic killing of this man.
What would you say has changed in Ferguson since 2014? And I'll ask that again of both of you as well. And so you mentioned the fact that we have made some changes, and then obviously that killing in Minneapolis took place. And so what has changed in Ferguson since 2014?
Well, one of the things that has changed since 2014, I was the first African American woman elected to the city council. And as you know, it was an all-white council. And at the time, we only had one African-American male, which was Dwayne James. So through the encouragement of a lot of people to run for that seat, I was elected. And I began to work in the community. And I found so much disparity in healthcare, education, housing. And going through the community, people were not happy. and nothing much has changed in Ferguson. We have had some economic development, but the people are looking for a way to better express themselves, and they are beginning to educate themselves on the importance of voting and being a part of the local government. They are beginning to understand that it's the local government that put the taxes on them. And now, in the midst of the hope, they are working to do things better.
Thank you. Michael?
Well, if you look at where we were 6 years ago and you look at where we are today, so we are blessed to have the best example of the evolution of what has changed in Ferguson on this Zoom with us tonight, in the form of having the first African-American mayor, and Ella Jones, and who was previously the first African-American female to serve on the city council. And so when you look at a community that at that time was about 67 to 70% Black, that, as the mayor mentioned, only had 1 out of 6 of the city council members was African American. There had never been an African American mayor. And at that point, 120 years of existence, the highest ranking African American on the police force there was 1 sergeant. So it had taken 120 years to get 1 sergeant in a police department that represented a community of taxpayers and citizens that's 67 to 70% African American. And as we know, the police department itself only had 3 out of 53 African American officers. So 3 out of 53 is not representative of a 67 to 70% African American population. 1 out of 6 is not representative in terms of the city council. But then eventually, from people becoming aware of the need to get involved in the political process, registering to vote, getting active in voting, now you have a majority of the city council African American. You have an African American police chief, the second police chief, and you have a police department that is approximately 50% African American now. So people are beginning to see the evolution of what can happen when you get involved in the process, how your government can change and be more reflective of the actual community itself. And in addition to that, of course, you have the new Centene Center that is about a $30 million facility. You have the new Starbucks partnership, new AT&T store. Of course, you have the Urban League Ferguson Community Empowerment Center that we bought from a variety of different interests. And there are other things that are working together to try to move this community forward. So there have been a number of things that have changed, but we have to stay the course in order for those changes to be in place for the long run, and also to help the rest of the community that still needs our help.
And Michael, you played such a large part in terms of turning around. You talk about Starbucks, you talk about Centene. I think a lot of that has been the result of your relationships and your commitment to bringing about change. Can you talk a little bit about some of that?
Sure. Well, really what we have to do in this community in order to really make a difference in the areas that need us the most is we need to run to the areas that need help, not run away from them. When the crisis in Ferguson happened, it was not something that we as a region should turn a blind eye to and let that community get into a whole host of negative things that would just go on and ruin this very stable community of 20,000+ people. And so I applaud the mayor for being willing to run, being willing to serve, and everyone else that is doing that. And from the Urban League standpoint, we are doing everything that we can to be of benefit to that whole corridor, whether it's our relationship with Starbucks, AT&T, Centene, and other government officials and other not-for-profits and bringing people to the table. We are proud of the work that we've been doing, but quite frankly, there's so much more that needs to be done. There are also social services that need to be done. One of the things that came out of the Ferguson crisis for us 6 years ago is, Urban League staff, we would all come at the end of the day and we would sit and we would talk with people in the community and ask what they needed. And the number one thing that every single person told us at that time, especially young men, was that they needed jobs, they needed hope, they needed ways to take care of themselves and their families. So as a result, we created the Save Our Sons program to give young African-American men access, pipelines, and the ability to find employment so that they could become financially independent, that they could be good fathers, good members of the community, give back, and be role models. And so thank God, we have now been able to, after 6 years of this program, we have been able to place about 1,000 men into jobs that otherwise did not have them. And it has expanded to the city of St. Louis. So it's on the north side of St. Louis, it's in the county, and other urban leagues have modeled this same program and adopted them in other communities, all as a result of what happened in Ferguson. So you see how the Ferguson crisis has made some positive strides as well. Much more work that has to be done, and we have to stay the course.
Thank you. Mayor Jones, what does all of the changes that have occurred, what does all of that represent and mean to you in your town, right? So you came in as a result of this groundswell of interest in really galvanizing and Black folks really coming out to vote and voted you in as the first African-American city council woman, and then now as the mayor. What does all of these changes represent to you?
Hope. They represent hope. It gives the people hope. They believe that when they work together, they found common ground, and they wanted to make a difference in the people who lead them. They worked. They went door to door, grassroots. They are looking right now. I had an opportunity to go to Jefferson City on last Monday. We are bringing new jobs here. We had a nursing home that was closed, went to the Certificate of Need Committee and sat there and talked with them. I talked with them and let them know how important this nursing home is going to be to bring jobs to the people. More importantly, we have senior citizens who still want to live in this neighborhood, and they don't want to be in nursing homes at least 40 and 50 miles away. They want to be close to their family. So just, it's the aspect of hope and people working together to make a difference in their lives.
Thank you. Thank you. What do you think in terms of how will we continue? You know, we're thinking about tonight, we're thinking about this whole idea of this legacy of Ferguson being built. And what are some things that people watching tonight can actually do to continue to build on this momentum and building this legacy of Ferguson?
Well, the most important thing is continue to have courageous conversations. If we don't continue to talk, we don't continue to come together, we will not keep the momentum going. Ferguson is a very resilient city, and it got to be that way with people working together. When Mr. was murdered, and Ferguson is considered as ground zero. And when the protesters came, considered as ground zero. So the protesters came out that night, and it was very violent. They tore up the police department. They broke windows out the businesses. But all in all, the Sunday morning, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, we were out there, the community got together, and they were cleaning up the debris. And a lot of the people was wondering, when are we going to move to the point where we can do peaceful protesting without so much violence? I applaud anyone who does peaceful protesting, but when it becomes violent and you destroy someone's business, and not only that, the employees, they don't have a place to work, then we have to do something about that. But other than that, just giving the people hope and moving forward with the courageous and impactful conversations.
What would you say those courageous and impactful conversations look like?
What they look like is people sitting down and trying to understand or getting to understand each other. When I say that, you may live next door to someone that doesn't even speak to you, but yet they will come out to the meetings for the conversation, and then they will find out, oh, you my next door neighbor, and we've been living next door to each other over 20 years, but they just finding out, and then they're learning that all Black people bad and all white folks are not bad. So we have to work together. We have to find common ground. And when I say find common ground, I cannot expect you to act like me, and you cannot expect me to act like you. You don't know a person until you walk a mile in their shoes. And people are beginning to understand that I don't have to hate you just because the color of your skin is Black. Those are stigmatisms that been there. And once they begin to talk to you, and once they begin to interact with you, they know that you want the best for your children. You want quality education. You want quality housing. You want quality health care. And they want the same identical thing you want. So now we have common ground. So let's work. So we work together, and we brought in Carton Glennon. They have a satellite station here to support our children. Now people are asking, what else can we do since we have found common ground?
It's excellent. Thank you. President McMillan, what would you say in terms of how would we build upon this legacy of Ferguson?
So I think there are many different things that we can do to build on the legacy in Ferguson. I would say for those of us that live in St. Louis, that we should continue to go. We should shop there, that we should go to restaurants, that we should patronize businesses in that community, that we should continue to support the elected officials and the not-for-profits and the charitable and civic organizations that are doing work in Ferguson. Because even though the St. Louis region is almost 3 million people, the city of Ferguson at about 20 or so thousand plus people will forever be part of the litmus test of how we are judged as a region. Every single one of us should be committed to social justice, whether that is in our personal lives and our professional lives. Combine and marry the two. Make sure that you do any and everything that you can to be a beacon of hope, a beacon of light, someone who is giving of their time, their talent, and their treasure, making a difference, helping St. Louisans live their best lives, neighbors helping neighbors, making our region the best that it can be. And for those of you who are watching in other parts of the country and or the world, because we know that Webster has campuses all around the world, do the same thing in your own local communities. You know, there is nothing stopping each one of us from being great, because Dr. King said we can all be great because we can all serve.
That's right. And Michael, both of you all are great examples of what it means to serve and to be of service to your community. Michael, the Urban League serves a wide variety of communities and people throughout the St. Louis area. What would you say are some of your most pressing needs?
Well, sadly, when you look at the tragedy of what has happened since COVID began, you're dealing with an economic crisis and you're dealing with a healthcare crisis, on top of the things that we talked about earlier in terms of now the racial crisis and police community crisis. So when you look at those things combined, what we have found at the Urban League is that we have been bombarded by requests for the basic things that people need to survive: food, assistance with rent, mortgages, gas, electric, diapers, formula, just the basic essentials that a human being needs to take care of their families. And so that's why we pivoted from our normal outreach center distributions and started doing these very large distributions each and every week. And I'm proud to say, out of the 15 that we have done, where we have been able to serve 45,000 families,
fantastic,
$2.5 million worth of food, toiletries, masks, gloves, sanitizer, and anything else that we could get our hands on. The largest one we ever did was in honor of Mayor Ella Jones so that we could go to the city of Ferguson. And that week we served over 5,000 families because we wanted to show people upon her election, upon her inauguration, that we were so blessed and privileged to host at our Ferguson Center, that we were running to the city of Ferguson, not running away, that we need to show by not only our statements, but our deeds, that the Urban League is overwhelmingly committed to the progress of the people of Ferguson.
It's fantastic. Michael, I had the privilege of spending some time and participating in that particular food distribution at St. Louis Community College at the Florissant Valley campus location. And the fact, Michael, that you have now done that for 15 weeks in a row, consistently. I think you missed the 4th of July holiday weekend.
Yes.
Right? You had to take some time to have, right? But the fact that you know, and this is something that you started in response to COVID to help there, right? But the fact that the community continues to show up in the ways in which, the need is there and the community continues to show up and you all are there to serve. But in thinking, I also think about the ways in which the community comes to show up to help you all serve. And countless people over and over, organizations, institutions show up on behalf of and because of the Urban League and you and the work that you all are doing. And I think it's fantastic that Saturday at Flow Valley had the largest turnout because of Mayor Jones, and a salute to the work that she is doing and is ushering in her town of Ferguson. I want to invite our viewers to use on Twitter the hashtag Webster Speaks to send any questions that they may have. Again, that's hashtag Webster Speaks on Twitter. In a moment, I'll turn to Earl and ask him to share any questions that we may have received at this point. But before I do that, I want to just ask one more question. We recently had the St. Louis American publisher and civil rights activist and your friend, to both of you, Dr. Donald Suggs, on our inaugural show 2 weeks ago. And he said, as much as we want change now, we should not be disappointed if it takes another generation to achieve true racial equity and equality. Do you agree or disagree with that? And if so, why? And talk to us about it.
Well, personally, at the rate as it's going, you would notice that the protest that's going on now is much different than it was when I was growing up. I don't want to date myself, but anyway, you're finding that you're having more young people coming together from all races. And you have the young Blacks, you have the whites, you have the Jews, you have the Gentiles. All of them are coming together. After talking to several young people, they began to realize that enough is enough, and they are the ones who are going to make this change. And by them coming together, standing together, and say, we are not going to tolerate any more injustice to the Black and brown people. We're going to work together. We're going to create policies. And one thing I like about them, because they believe not only do they need to protest, but they also need to create policies. They need to start running for various offices, local government, register people to vote, make certain that people be educated as to who's on the ballot. So they have the energy, they have the knowledge, and they are willing to do what it takes to move the ball a little bit further down the road. So I'm looking for the change to be in my lifetime before I leave here, because of the energy of these young people, the way they are organized, the way they're going to do policy. Yes, we're going to see a change.
Excellent. Thank you. What about you, President McMillan?
You know, I think that we all work, hope, and aspire to have a nation that is free of racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, and every other type of discrimination. And just like the mayor said, I am extremely encouraged by the hard work, the dedication, the collaboration, and the fact that you have so many different races and ethnicities and all types of groups coming together for change, that I hope that I live to see it as well. But I think that all of us need to fight as hard as we possibly can and hope that it comes as soon as it can. But when it does come, do not take for granted that it will stay there. We can never allow ourselves to become complacent in this fight. The same country that elected LBJ and JFK and had a great society turned right back around and elected Richard Nixon and a war on crime that helped devastate Black communities all over America. So we are the same nation that did that. We're the same nation that elected Barack Obama as the first Black president in the history of the United States that many of us never thought we would ever live to see.
Right.
And we then went in another direction. So as you look at the history of this country, the progress has not been a line like this. That is, it's a jagged line. It goes up and down and things get better and then they change. And so we can't give up the fight, even when we feel like we have made our way to certain milestones. When I was a child, Thurgood Marshall was and will always remain a role model and an icon. He was replaced on the bench by someone who is not an icon or a role model to the Urban League or our movement for justice and equality. So just because you have achieved something does not mean that it will stay that way. We have to stay the course.
That's powerful, Michael. That's really powerful. Those illustrations, I think, truly drive home the point that you've made there. Thank you. Earl, do you have any questions out there from our audience?
Yes, we do. We have a couple of questions here. One good question is for Mayor Jones. As the first Black mayor of Ferguson, what are the biggest challenges you face to make substantive change during your tenure?
Well, right now, I've been in office about 35 days. I'm keeping track of it because 90 days, I promised the people that I am going to have a town hall meeting so they would know what I have been doing and how I have been assessing the needs of the city. And one of the things that I'm really looking at is the way our government is set up in the city of Ferguson. Ferguson has a strong council government. In other words, 7 people rule. The mayor is basically there to lead meetings and make decisions, but not administrative decisions. So looking at the government, the way in which Ferguson is governed, that's one of the major things I've been looking at. In addition to that, I got a telephone call today, and it was from one of my council members, and she is kind to, I think, how would I put it? She's concerned about Ferguson services for school districts, the Riverview Gordon School District, the Hazelwood School District, the Jennings School District, and the Ferguson Florissant School District. 85% of the children goes to the Ferguson Florissant School District. However, that district is more wealthy than the Riverview Gordon School District. And her thing to me tonight, she said, Mayor, I have these children who are in the underserved population of Ferguson in Ward 3, and how are we going to get Chromebooks to those kids to learn when they are going to be homeschooled? And like I shared with, and I'm talking about Councilwoman Fran Griffin, as I shared with her at all times, she brings these questions up, and we have always worked together, is that we're going to do like we always done. Get out, raise money, and make certain we let Michael McMillan know what's going on with our children.
Is an advocate there for sure. Yeah, when you think about this COVID, and I think it certainly has highlighted the gap that exists not just in education and within schools, but when we start talking about technology and we talk about laptops and Chromebooks and we talk about access to internet, it certainly has underscored that. And I think that it is the Black and brown kids who ultimately pay the greatest price because of not having those resources and access. And, think about COVID, and there's lots of concerns about returning to school for safety reasons, and obviously so for health. But we also think about just the stability that school often provides for students, as meals and food, and
Right. And if the parent is home, they're not creating an income, and they have to be home with their kids. And then we have something more deeply pressing, is that it becomes very important that we provide testing, in other words, COVID-19 testing for the residents in this area. I brought, and I work with Mr. McMillan. We had the first COVID-19 testing site in the city in Ferguson, in the North County area. And we worked to get this testing site done. And after the first week of servicing over 300 people, we realized that we had to go mobile. We started working with Affinia Healthcare. We went over to Oakmont apartment building. We went to Canfield Green. We went to Park Ridge. So we finding that not only do they need the basic needs, but we must work to keep them healthy. And if they have any symptoms, we've got to make certain that these tests are available to them and they don't have to wait 2 weeks to get the results.
Thank you. Thank you. Earl, do you have another question?
Yes. This is for Mr. McMillan. Who will the Urban League be partnering with to achieve the community's goals? Will the Urban League partner with small-scale social services such as nonprofits?
So absolutely. We pride ourselves on the number of partnerships that we have. Vincent alluded to what we have been able to pull together in relationship to our pandemic response. And if you look at that and you see the list of 50 different sponsors that support us every single week, and 250 staff and volunteers that come out during this pandemic and start working sometimes at 6 a.m. all the way up until 5 or 6 p.m., in some cases in 100-degree heat. You see the best of St. Louis. You see people giving of their time, their talent, and their treasure, literally giving us the capacity to have at this point given out $2.5 million worth of unbudgeted amounts of food, in terms of everything that we have purchased and everything that's been donated, the toiletries, and then the mask, gloves, and sanitizer to hopefully curb this virus, especially in the zip codes and the areas of the Black community and the entire region that need it the most. So when it talks, when you think about partnership, we try to partner with as many different organizations as we possibly can. During the months of August and September, we will be going into the school districts and we'll be giving away book bags and school supplies in the areas that need it the most, that have the highest concentration of students that do not have the capacity to buy them through their families, so that we will add to what we're doing with the weekly distributions. We will work with the various superintendents in the various cities and municipalities and others, and we look forward to working with some smaller not-for-profits as well. I wish we could do even more partnerships than we do, but we do as many as we can, and we're always trying to find new ways to do others so that, quite frankly, we can work not only harder, but smarter as well. Because if any one organization could fix everything, it would have been fixed by now. And sadly, all of us working all the time have not been able to fix some of these tragic issues and these disparities that have been going on in some cases for centuries.
Michael, can you talk some about any of your newest partnerships or mergers possibly?
Yes. Yeah, so we are elated today. Today is one of the most historic moments in our 102-year history in the St. Louis region. We announced our merger with Grace Hill Settlement House. Grace Hill is a historic legacy social service agency that was created by the Episcopal Church here in the St. Louis community. They are 117 years old with 5 different locations and a staff of about 65 people and 25,000 clients. So for us to come together at this time, in this space, in this place, and show that we can focus on collaboration and not competition, that we serve the same people, and we have the same mission, and we are better off working together for the same goal of improving this community and making it the best that it can be, we hope will encourage other not-for-profits to look at mergers and how we can work together so that we can accomplish these goals. Because we have 17,200 incorporated not-for-profits in the St. Louis region. And that, in many ways, is just too many. As you look at decreasing government funds, decreasing charitable funds, corporations that may be moving out of the St. Louis region, or companies that have been bought and don't have the same civic, charitable, and philanthropic commitment to the St. Louis region, we have got to do more with less. So as a result of that, all of us in the not-for-profit world have to take a very hard look in the mirror and see how can we come together. And one thing that I truly feel blessed about here at the Urban League is we are America's only not-for-profit social service advocacy organization with almost 100 affiliates across this country that was created by Blacks and whites to improve the living conditions of Black people in urban communities, but also improve race relations and be the bridge between the corporate, business, philanthropic, and government communities with the Black community and our allies to work for progress in this country. So with that being the case, you need not worry whether there will be an urban league. There will definitely be an urban league because this community is committed to the vision and the mission of the agency. And we have a national organization that would not allow its top affiliate to not be present and accountable and serve this community. So I'm proud of what we have done. There's much, much more to be done. We're looking for other partners to merge with and to work with because we want to be as effective as we possibly can. We do not want to have a podcast 20 years from now and not be able to identify the success of what we have been doing as we are all working ourselves tirelessly to make a difference. So we have to do it smarter than we have done in the past.
I have no doubt that that will be the case. Earl, do you have another question out there?
Yes, we do. And this question is for both of our distinguished guests. If you could tell anybody your vision, what would your vision be and why?
My vision is to look at Ferguson. Right now, Ferguson has 22% rate of poverty. That's 12.5% more than in the state of Missouri. The goal is to work and help educate people to lift themselves out of poverty, create jobs that will give people a livable wage, where you find single moms, she don't have to work 1 and 2 jobs to either, to pay her rent, because 50% of whatever she makes, she has to pay her rent. So work on diminishing poverty, at least in the city of Ferguson, and really all over, because there's no reason why we should have so much poverty, because the United States is supposed to be the richest country in the world, and everyone comes over here to make a good living. So the people who are here, we should work to end poverty for all.
Thank you.
Well, Mayor, that is an amazing goal, and we will be your ally and partner in doing that as much as we can. So I would say to answer that question, Mr. McCoy, in terms of the first phase for the Urban League here in St. Louis, we are blessed, as I mentioned, to be able to serve 125,000 people now that we have merged with Grace Hill. And we were able to do that with 300 plus staff, with 75 plus members of our board of directors, where we stay true to our founding mission of improving race relations. So our board is almost always half Black, half white, but also has representation from the Asian community, from the Latino community, from the LGBTQIA community, and others, to make sure that we have a broad spectrum of voices at the table as we work together for our mission. But as an agency that was created to bring all these different worlds together and then serve the Black community and anyone that walks through our doors, because any given year, 10 to 20% of our clients are not African American. But our internal goal is to make sure that this agency is the most significant institution in the African American community that ever was or ever will be. And that is our goal, that we do more for more people and we have a more impactful role in this region. That being said, we don't want to be the #1 urban league in America in a city that is not progressing, in a city where everyone does not have a seat at the table, in a city where African Americans, Latino, gay, and other people come to the table and feel like they are being shunned as opposed to welcome. We want to have a diverse community that embraces everyone and brings everyone to the table and makes us all feel as though we have a place and that it is not only just a feeling, but a reality. We want St. Louis to be someplace that is thriving, where young people that come and have visited from all over the world to go to Webster University will want to actually live here after they get their degrees, because it's such a great region, such a great community, that we continue to grow in population, not that we are stagnant in population, not that we lose a congressman when we had our redistricting and we had our census 10 years ago. We want to be ahead of the curve, and we want to be a national model where you can go through what we did in Ferguson and go from a tragedy to a triumph, and that you can see so many different ways that we have progressed and we have moved this community forward.
Fantastic. I want to, tonight, the news broke just before I saw it about 5:30 tonight that civil rights leader Charles Evers, who is the brother of Medgar Evers, died this evening. In addition to his death and loss tonight, last week we lost both Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis. And Michael, I saw on your social media you had some photos with you and Reverend Lewis, and I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts to share in terms of their loss and the impact that they've had on the community, and I'd offer that up to you as well, Mayor Jones.
Well, sadly, we are losing some of the great leaders that this country has ever created. There will never be another Congressman John Lewis. There'll never be another Reverend Dr. C.T. Vivian, and so many others. And so when you look at their lives, their legacy, what they fought for, I think what all of us who are interested in equity, social justice, and real change need to do is to try to honor their legacy by making sure that we do everything that we can to promote the same things that they lived and died for. That everyone gets registered to vote, participates in every election, that they participate in the census, that we are active in our communities, that we give back, we volunteer with different organizations, whatever organization or entity that it may be, that we volunteer with our churches, whether we participate in or are part of a faith community or not. If not, then just do organizations, but do something meaningful so that you can pay tribute to these great men and women of the civil rights leadership that are leaving us, because that's the way we will continue moving forward as a community. They gave us the example. They showed us what we could be and how we can be greater than what we are. And so it's our job to live out their legacy by volunteering, by giving everything that we can personally and professionally to make this country everything that it can be.
Thank you.
Great. With Congressman John Lewis, it's a great loss. And with so many other leaders, it's a great loss. And one thing that Mr. McMillan said, yes, to live out the example that they set for us, it's very important that right now is my mantra. It's the 2020 census. We must be counted. It becomes very important that we be counted, and it's so easy to fill out the census. You could telephone, email, or in person. A lot of people fail to realize the census is so vital to our community because it helps with our senior citizen programs, our Head Start program, the SNAP program, the infrastructure of our cities. And people fail to realize when one person decides not to complete the census, our municipalities, our city lose $1,300 for 10 years.
Wow.
One person, $13,000. Now, if you have a family of 10 that's not doing that, look how much our community loses. And we wonder why our streets are the way they are. We wonder why housing is the way it is. It's because we are not taking that census seriously. And that's something I think we can honor our civil rights leaders is let's get counted. Let's get counted and make certain that we count our babies as well as the grown people, because that will help us so much as a community. The federal dollars coming back to our communities, and we cannot afford to lose in the state of Missouri, the city of St. Louis, another congressional seat. We need another congressional seat.
So we also need to get out there and vote too, right? It's so critically important. So
yeah,
critical.
We got to vote, but we got to get counted too.
That's right. So I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And I invite our viewers to join us on our next show, which is August 5th, when we will sit down with Dr. Jamaica Woody Cooper. And she's a Webster University faculty member. She's a counseling psychologist. She's an educator. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author, and she's a civic leader in St. Louis. And she will talk about systemic racism and its effect on mental health, as well as racial inequities in obtaining overall health services in the Black community during COVID. Before I finally say goodbye, I'd like to invite at this time Dr. Beth Strobel, who is our chancellor at the university, and I know that she would like to thank each of you as well. And so Dr. Strobel will be coming up in a couple of seconds here. But thank you both so very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I see Dr. Strobel.
All right. Well, good evening, all, and thank you. This has been most impactful personally and professionally. And Mayor Jones, it's my first opportunity to hear you speak and to see you right here in my own home. And congratulations and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you know, anytime I talk with Mr. McMillan, of course, I have to say Dr. McMillan because he was a recipient of an honorary degree at Webster University and spoke at our commencement several years ago. And little did we know then, Michael, what your leadership, what form it was going to take. But certainly knew that you were a person who had given his life and career in service of others. And certainly, Mayor Jones, we see that that is the case for you as well, in service of your fellow human being and in service of a principle that is so important to all of us, that Black lives do matter and that Black citizens, Black individuals are worthy of our respect and a sense of shared humanity, and that equity has to underlie everything that we're about right now. you have pointed to some very specific examples of how to put that in action. So for all of us that are seeking to honor the legacy of those who came before us and to leave this life better than what it was as we came in, your examples, you embody courage, you embody vision, you embody hope, you embody the positive conviction that making every step forward and being selfless in your devotion to others can make a difference. So I just want to say to everyone who participated tonight, but particularly to those colleagues who have put the program together, and to you, Mayor Jones and Mr. McMillan, we are better for you, and you have helped us through conversation tonight to be better ourselves. And I thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And again, I thank the audience for joining us. And again, I invite you all to join us again on Wednesday, August 5th, same time, 7 o'clock, for a continued conversation, this time around systemic racism and the effects on mental health. And again, Dr. Jamika Woody Cooper will be our guest. Thank you all very much. Be safe, be well, and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.